Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 7th of June, comes to you from London. And a lot more red on the screen this morning than yesterday, so that's just a bit telling. And if we look at the energy mix, again, quite a lot more red there as well. And if I look at my alerts that are coming in on the updated news for our enterprise users, we're seeing some changes here as well. So MBP's just turned bearish below the cloud. And that's on the short term, which is normally the hourly trend. Very short term, TTF giving new downside targets. And if we look at emissions, we've got a little upside target. Tends to behave in the opposite direction from gas. Sterling oversold based on the move back through the Bollinger Bands on the 60-minute chart. So that's quite interesting. And we can just go the way through. So we've seen quite a lot of downside targets for TTF again kicking in this morning. Bearish change for silver, moving back below the 60-minute cloud. Again, these just all charts that are ticking in. So quite interesting. Just from the colours, I can see that we're triggering quite a lot of bearish alerts. And of course, you can set these alerts up for your own instruments, the things that you watch. So really important, really, is what's changed. I mean, I do this every day, but what's most interesting is what's changing. So the dollar is falling below the cloud on the 60-minute chart. The dollar here falling below the cloud on the 60-minute chart and then rising again. So we're seeing here the weekly, the daily, and the 60-minute chart. So my long-term, medium-term, and short-term view of the market. I'm running here on Refinitiv Icon. Of course, with UpData, you can run on lots of different data services, and there are just dozens that you can choose from and click on the fly. So whether you run on Bloomberg, Icon, Trayport, totally up to you. Just configure the ones that you're compatible with. Looking at the euro, we're sinking lower below the cloud here on the medium term and back below the cloud on the short term, and also, of course, long-term bearish with these big downside targets. And of course, we've written reports about the euro. Go to our special reports and you'll see here that you'll find a report on the euro. And so that's quite key. In fact, it'll be in the global reports. How low will the euro go? And you can go and read those reports as part of your enterprise subscription, all included in the price. Of course, we put our morning report out this morning. We put our weekly report out yesterday and our monthly report for all European gas and power markets. And we were bearish TTF for the week. That was the really big call for the week when everything else was looking relatively okay. Sterling sitting at 124.92, just fighting below the cloud here. So bearish against the dollar on all three time frames. Against the euro, we're sitting just below the 117 level. Again, just struggling to get back above the cloud there. Bitcoin back below the $30,000, was up 5% yesterday, down 5% today. It really is game over for crypto. We've deactivated the upside targets and we're now into bearish territory on the medium and long-term charts. So that rise was very short-lived, and it's really hard to see crypto recovering from here. S&P 500 index was up very slightly yesterday. We're just testing the cloud at the moment on the long-term chart. Medium term, we're still bearish. Short term, we are bullish, but the reality is we do still have these downside targets hanging over us. So that's going to be quite key. Looking at the futures this morning, the S&P future down 1/3%, the Nasdaq down 0.4%. The VIX volatility is just sitting steady at that point, at that 25-point mark. And remember, the VIX, the fear index, we're just seeing that gradual rise. If we're in the 30s, we're fearful. In the mid-20s, it's still pretty fearful, and below 20 we start to be a bit more relaxed about the market. FTSE future down slightly, the DAX in Germany down just under 1%, so just struggling here below the cloud on that weekly, back on the medium term. Of course, the US is not doing that, so it's quite interesting to see that divergence. Japan was up, but the rest of Asia was pretty much down. Hang Seng was down, India was down 1.2%. And again, that medium-term chart looking quite bearish there. The Aussie market was down 1.5%. The Aussie Federal Reserve in Australia increased interest rates higher than expected, and that hit the market in Oz, and we are just seeing that there. I've got quite a few Aussie investments myself. Looking at, we'll look at the energy mix in a minute. Grains are down about 1%. Gold is actually just sitting steady at 1845. It's bearish on the short and medium term, but long term still holding up with some very big targets, of course. And silver, we mentioned, was breaking lower, back below that 22 level, quite critical there. And we're seeing US 10-year yields, they jumped yesterday back above that 3% mark, so bullish on all three time frames. A rise in bond yields, almost a dead cert. Looking at the energy mix, we're just seeing Brent crude just ticking negative at the moment, so that's quite interesting. WTI is still holding up. Really interesting to see how this spread between these two is less than $1, so it's really quite closely aligned now. And looking at US nat gas, we're actually up 0.5% there. We said in our morning report above 950, but the really key thing is we are breaking this triangle pattern, so that's very, very bullish for US nat gas. Coal sitting at 233, so again just looking quite key there. And if we look at emissions, that's also just pulling all the way back there, so just steady today, because we are seeing big falls in the gas market. Down TTF down 3%, NBP down 5%. And the really interesting thing on TTF, and we highlighted this in our morning recall, is how we've broken that support level. Keep an eye on these new 1 minute targets kicking in. That's going to be quite key. German power is down 1.2%, but the trend is very much different from gas and still looking pretty strong. That's it for today. Keep an eye on those targets and those news sources. Remember, you can see all of the energy reports that we put out. So here's today's, here's yesterday's. There's where we were negative on TTF. So that's really quite key. Keep an eye out for that and watch those targets. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.